Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Radio Network. Inside Boxing Weekly is brought to you by Power Plus Mouthguard, Replenishing Care Technologies, and MyBookie.ag. I'm your host for the Inside Boxing Weekly show, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I want to welcome in my co-host. First up, we got Jeremiah Preisser. How you doing tonight, Jeremiah?
Very, very good. Always. I'm always good. Good, happy to talk boxing with you guys. Let's get it going.
All right, and of course, from West Virginia, right now residing in New Jersey, our resident lawyer, just in case Jeremiah says his cuss words too much and the FCC gets on us, John Einreinhofer.
Right, and I can help you with that. We're not regulated by the FCC because we're not over the broadcast.
I know, but don't. See, I mean, you just lost your job now.
See, that's why I never jumped in.
Well, now we're going to let you go.
Well, other issues could come up, too.
All right, guys.
A lot's going on in boxing. A lot going on in boxing.
Yeah, a lot going on in boxing. We're not going to talk about Triple G Canelo tonight. We're going to do that later on in the week. We'll have a special show for that. But we had a great Super Flyweight show. We had a young guy. We had the start of the Cruiserweight, tournament, for what that's worth, which actually I think is actually a pretty decent tournament. We will start off with the young guy, which is David Benavidez, who I think had a lot more trouble with Ronald Gavril than we thought, winning a split decision. Benavidez, to me, John, was lackluster. I mean, he didn't look that great. I mean, do you think he was lackluster, or just maybe Gavril was better than we thought?
I think he was lackluster. I've said and written this sometime in the past, but it's definitely worth saying again after what we saw this past weekend. I think in modern boxing, analysis of weight is far, far overrated. So I want to state that first. But with that out of the way, I make an exception for David Benavidez. He was well over 200 pounds growing up as a kid. He's only 20 now. Very early when he was a pro, he was fighting his fights over 168 pounds, technically in the light heavyweight limit. I'd stated and written, I think that they wanted him down at 168 because they saw how weak it was. They figured to be a training ground where they could get the attention of him picking up the belt. But why I say all this is Benavidez, to me, does not look good a lot of the time when he has to come in at 168 pounds or under. He looks drained. He doesn't look like he has the same strength. And that's what we saw again Saturday night. And, he's only 20 years old. I don't know enough physiologically that, how many fights he has to do this for before maybe it retards his career. But I think he's on the way to that. And the light heavyweight division is murderer's row right now. We know that, and he's only 20 years old. But I think the way you could move him is, you could have him fighting at 175 pounds, and he doesn't have to be fighting, Peter Biev, say, in his first fight at 175 pounds, or Marcus Brown or somebody like that. He can fight some lesser guys and, kind of wait till he matures a little bit. But I don't like the 168-pound thing. Again, it's all about plastic belts and figuring get him some attention while he's developing. And I just don't think this 168 pounds works for him. So I totally agree. And I've seen this from him a couple of times when he comes in at 168. And I think it's a problem for him.
Yeah, I agree. And 168 is a weight class that is not one of the hotter classes in boxing right now, Jeremiah. And I agree with John completely on this, which is like the first time we've ever done this. So, John, just hold your breath and relax. Everything will be fine. But I agree completely with John. And I think what's going to happen here is if they keep screwing around there are some good enough fighters down there to beat him at a drained weight.
Yeah, and that might be the case. I mean, even given that, I do think that Benavidez, we talk about how, tough it might be for him to make weight, but you look at his body, and he's still fairly soft. Of course, some guys are just built like that. And personally, again, we're not a big fan of this, 17-weight format in boxing, but I would like to see, and politically it's likely not to happen, but I would like to see him fight somebody like Gilberto Ramirez before he moves up to 175. James DeGale, I think, is doable, and that's a fight I would really like to see as well. But like John says, I wouldn't mind him going up to 175 and taking on some softer touches as well. I think that's probably. I think the Gavril experience was good for him. Initially I thought that Gavril's style, because he puts the earmuffs on, I thought that would be easy pickings for Benavidez, but it showed, Gavril, he's improved since his loss. He's pretty technical. He's stuck with the jab, stuck with the body shots, and I thought it helped him. But Benavidez, again, he's used to coming out guns blazing as well. This time he decided to take it a little bit slower, box a little bit more, and I think he realized that Gavril was a bit better than expected too. But it's a good learning experience, and I think Benavidez is just going to get better from here. What he does at 175, I don't know. That's a tough one. They're we all know that 175 is a really tough division, and he's going to have to improve marketably before he I think gets to the same level that he is in 168 at 175.
All right, let's move on to the cruiserweight tournament. You had Usyk, who I know that Jeremiah is a huge fan of, TKO 10 over Marco Huck. My question is this, though. I mean, there were a lot of clowning around. I watched the fight against Breedis. I just got done watching the Usyk fight. I thought Breedis handled Huck better than Usyk did, Jeremiah.
Well, sorry. Well, you might be right there. Breedis is in the tournament. But I thought Usyk handled him pretty easily. I mean, there were some times that Hook was able to land some good shots, but I thought overall it was a dominant performance by Usyk.
All right, real quick, though, this is the thing I saw. When Breedis beat Huck almost looked like he gave up by the middle of the fight. He looked like he made Huck tap out.
You know what? I personally, I think it's because Breidis hits harder than Usyk does. I think he was able to get Hook's attention quicker. I mean, if you look at some of Breidis's fights, he's more of a boxer puncher than Usyk is. But if you look at some of his fights, I'm trying to remember which one it was in particular. He fought a heavyweight and he knocked him cold with a devastating uppercut. So that's what I think the difference is. Even though Usyk has a lot of knockouts on his resume, he's not a one-punch type guy. Breidis, however, is. Hook's a tough guy, but hopefully, we'll get to that point where maybe we'll have Breidis versus Usyk and they can decide. But in regards to the fight itself, you can see Hook's not prime anymore. He fights in that same stereotypical German style that I'm not a fan of. I don't know what it is about Germany. They're well known for their efficiency. I just don't see what it is. I think they need some new coaching, some new blood to be injected so they can change these guys stylistically. Hook looks like Abraham. Abraham looks like Sven Odke. I mean, it's just generations of guys who fight very, go back, Mask fought the same way too.
They're boring, is what you're trying to say, right?
Well, what I'm saying is it's fine and well if you're sticking to fights in Europe, but when you want to progress at a world level, you're stunting your growth because you're not being as efficient as you can. That high guard.
Punches. I mean, really, I think that Adrian Broner might be part German.
Yeah, you think about it, right? He puts the earmuffs on, it kind of right. Yeah, it kind of looks like it. But the problem is the Germans, they start behind the jab. They block well. That is fine, but they need to implement some stylistic variety in there because these guys are almost always losing at the world level, and I think they could be better. They just move their head a bit more, threw a bit more punches. I mean, they almost never throw in combination. I don't know if I've ever seen a German fighter who's well known for throwing in combinations. But anyways, that said, Usyk looked damn good. I was pretty. I don't want to make too much of the performance because Hook is a bit older, and that's a fact. But Usyk, he was versatile. He counterpunched well. When he decided to let his hands go, his combinations were nice and fluid. I didn't like the incident. What was it in round? Round 8 when Usyk fell to the ground and Hook punched him? I thought that was immediately going to be a point deduction, but they just warned him and let him carry on. Also, I want to talk about the presentation as well. I thought it was really, really good. I mean, the whole build-up and everything, the music, the introductions, all really, really well done. But the fact that the free stream that they offered on the website cut out in like round 6, they got to fix that. Something's got to be done.
All right, John, what was your take on Usyk's performance?
Yeah, Usyk, for me, it's 3 fights in the row. I've kind of got the same analysis with him, even though he's gotten stoppages in 2 of the 3. He's good, but he's not going to be as great as I thought he was, and a lot of people are still thinking he's going to be great, but I don't think he's going to be great. What great would have been, he's got the height for it, would have been a quick move up to heavyweight and being a factor in the top 10. The heavyweight division is still not strengthened up enough where I would discount him being able to crack the heavyweight top 10, but it's not going to be much better than that. I would think Gassiev's got a shot to take him in this tournament. And that's the one everybody's looking forward to. But that's the fight that I think Gassiev actually can win. I think the only disadvantage for Gassiev is he doesn't have the amateur background, even though he also, comes from the Eastern European system. He didn't have many amateur fights, and, Usyk was the top, Ukrainian amateur. But, also Hook's done, basically. He's got, 3 losses in his last 5 fights or something like that. So, that's the thing when you're seeding it. You do that in the tournament, as we all know how tournaments normally work. But when you get first-round matchups, if there's enough people in the tournament, you're dealing with mismatches. And, the odds makers viewed this one as a mismatch. And so nobody was expecting Hook to win. But Usyk, to me, cruiserweight, you're over 200 pounds. You're that good. You should have the power that you're blowing out overmatched opponents, even if you're more of a boxer. I mean, heck, Muhammad Ali, earlier in his career still had a very high KO percentage until later, in his career. And again, even though Usyk's does at this point, and he's got 2 stoppages in his last 3, he's just not disposing of these guys as emphatically and as early enough as he should be if he was that good. So I keep waiting, to see that, and I'm just not seeing it.
All right, that brings us to HBO's Super Flyweight show. You had Estrada winning a close unanimous decision over Carlos Quaderas, or as Michael Buffer would say, Carlos Estrada, which
he's showing his age.
Great. I thought, I think that he sees the words, he just can't say them sometimes. Kind of like a boxer, you see you got to throw a punch, but it doesn't compute. But actually, I had Quaderas winning the fight by a point. I think Jeremiah had the opposite. John, what was your take on the fight and the decision?
I was okay with the decision, though it was a type of fight that could have gone either way. But I thought Quadras was a bit slightly overrated going into the fight. My belief didn't change, even though it was a fight that could have gone either way. He jumps around too much. He wastes a lot of energy. He does move his hands, but you even saw in this fight, even though Estrada's a good fighter, Estrada wasn't quite as active and landing as much, especially in the first half of the fight, as you would have expected. But, we're at 115 pounds, and every time Estrada was hitting Quadras on the chin, Quadras was getting moved. He was getting, you could see little wobbles. And, in a lower weight, these are not heavyweights, even though you have guys in the lower divisions that are better punchers. They just don't, in general, have that kind of punching power. Even though you have exceptions. So that to me showed also that Quadras' chin might not be that strong when he's up in with some better opposition. And, Estrada took advantage of that in the second half. If Estrada would have fought the first half like the second half, there wouldn't have been any doubt. But he was very slow in getting it going in the fight. And I thought it looked in the first half of the fight like he wasn't going to get it going, but to his credit, he stayed at it and stayed aggressive, and then he started landing every power punch he threw, and Quadras was getting rocked, and of course he got dropped by a good one, but that was the difference in the fight. I didn't think Estrada had as good of a 12th round as he might have needed with the fight that close, but it turned out that it didn't matter.
All right, Jeremiah, your opinion of Quadras and Estrada. Actually, I think both guys are a little bit overrated.
No, I don't think so. I think they're both pretty damn good.
I don't think either one of them's a great fighter.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say great. I mean, the problem with the little guys
not
is
for Max Kellerman.
That's right. That's easy for him to say.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I actually appreciated Max Kellerman's input more than usual, because he was actually pointing out he wasn't quite so biased towards Quadras in the beginning. It seemed like the others, Lampley and Ward, they were a little more, on his side. And funny, when I was on Twitter, it seemed as if the British feed had Estrada kind of, winning from the outset. So it's funny there when I talk to the British fans. They seem to have Estrada up by, as much as 3 points at the end, whereas most Americans had it, damn near split.
I think the fight could have been a draw.
I think I could have settled for that, but I'm glad they got the winner. I mean, like John was saying, Estrada seemed to have more power when he was landing. For me, it was quality over quantity. Quadras was outworking him in most of the rounds, but he wasn't sitting on a lot of his shots. Estrada didn't seem to be hurt by many of them. And again, it's hard to say, who's really great in the lower weight classes, because there's such a lack of, depth in these divisions. But 115, I think whoever comes out of this whole mess on top is a pretty damn good fighter, and going to have a strong resume going in. But I mean, the fight itself was really good. I mean, this card turned out to be what a lot of us expected it to be. I mean, a lot of us expected a different result in the main event, but I was impressed by Estrada. He had a long layoff because of an injury. It took him a little while to get going, but once he did, I mean, I see a really well-rounded fighter. I mean, he gave Roman Gonzalez hell years ago, and that's part of the reason why he's at 115 now, because he was chasing Gonzalez. He wanted the rematch really badly. But I think he's versatile. I mean, I think he's got good pop. He can counterpunch. He can box. He can slug. There isn't much he can do, and I really, really want to see him against either Inoue or Rungvisai. Rungvisai first.
Yeah, I would take either one. But you talked about Inoue. I know there were some questions before his American debut. He fought Antonio Nieves, TKO 6th round. And the thing that really stood out to me, Jeremiah, was the jab.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, actually, when I was watching him, I was thinking of Gennady Golovkin, because there are few aggressors who are also technically sound who have a really, really good jab. Golovkin is obviously different in that regard. Well, so is Inoue. I mean, he was really cranking it out there. I wish he would feint with it a little bit more, add some variety to it, jab more to the body. But he was cranking it out. He was getting his body behind it, and you could see that he can crack. I mean, he was really getting some mustard behind those shots, and I mean, he was dominating from the outset. I got to give it to Nieves as well, because he was boxing pretty well. His guard was tight. It looked as if he came in with a game plan, and he tried to stick to it. Problem is, and he was just too damn good. I mean, he looked big. His power, you could hear him. I mean, he was cranking them out. And when he started connecting with the left hooks to the body, I felt it like it was just a matter of time. And I thought it was smart on his part that he kept throwing him. He kept going to the breadbasket once he recognized that he was hurting the guy. I was impressed with his performance. Kellerman and Lampley, they were saying, what was it? Before the stoppage, they were saying, Inoue has to get him out of here. It was Kellerman. He was like, okay, we don't want to see this repetition. We don't want to see Inoue carry him to the finish line. This is his American debut. Make us clamor for a fight with the winner of Rungvisai and Gonzalez. And I think he did that. I was impressed by the kid. I want to look forward to. I want to see him step up his competition. I actually think Estrada is more deserving of Rungvisai than Inoue at the moment, but I want to see Inoue against a top guy.
All right. So who do you want to see Inoue against? What about Quadras?
I think that would be a good fight. I wouldn't mind that at all. I mean, it would be a good gauge, because we got to see Gonzalez versus him. We got to see Estrada versus him. That would be damn good. Personally, I wouldn't mind. I don't know if it would be an easier fight to make, but maybe Ancawas, the the guy we saw on the Jeff Horn Manny Pacquiao undercard. I think that would be interesting. And Kawas is pretty good, though. Part of me thinks that Rashid Warren might be getting that fight. Yaffe, he's a pretty good youngster. I wouldn't mind seeing that as well. He's got some pretty good size. But there are a lot of guys he can fight. Now, I'm just hoping he takes a top 5 guy on. That's my only knock on him. He looks really, really good. I just need him to step up the competition.
All right, John, were you impressed with him?
Yeah, I thought he looked good. I'm like Jeremiah in terms of I want to see better competition. The only thing I'd say, even though he looked good, I didn't see anything really to criticize in the performance. That's why I have to be fair to him. But with that said, I got to go on my eye test as I sat there watching the fight, and I thought, even though kind of on paper you could see the justification for it, is this guy really in the top 10 pound for pound in the world? And my gut off the eye test said no. So,
but there's no way to put him in the top 10 pound for pound just because of his lack of fighting top guys.
Well, a lot of people have him in there at this point, though. So
yeah, but a lot of people have Errol Spence too, and he's only got one decent one.
Yeah, but I could see myself. I could see it with Errol Spence more. That was kind of like my only criticism. But being fair to Inoue, I didn't see anything during the performance to really criticize him, to say, oh well, I'm sure he's going to have problems against better opposition with this. But that's the problem when you're just in a fight that's not good competition. Is that Nieves was basically in survival mode, and I think that's why they stopped the fight, because he was in such survival mode. He wasn't even trying to punch, and he'd been on the canvas that they just stopped the fight. But that's not an opponent that's really just showing you anything, because there's nothing coming back at you. So for me, the grade was almost. Most times I would say I see something where, I say, okay, this guy looks like he's got this, where we know, he's for real here. I saw some good, left hooks to the body. He looked powerful for that weight class, but I just have to almost give him incomplete because of the opposition. In other words, I think it was good for him that we needed to see him in the United States. We did. That was good for boxing. That's good for marketing. I was happy to see him here. I think that was a really good thing. So I was in favor of him being brought over and getting exposure. But in terms of where it's going to go against other fighters, it's just almost kind of an incomplete for me.
All right, then we go to the main event. We had Rungvisai, who once again beat Chocolatito, Roman Gonzalez. John, what was your take on the fight? And it looks like Gonzalez has probably fought his last fight.
My take on it was that Roman Gonzalez was completely shot. He looked like he was fighting underwater from the opening bell, and on both knockdowns, he was beat to the punch. And this is at 115 pounds. We're talking about a speed division. And his opponent was 30 years old, and he's 30 years old, but he's the guy that originally was fighting at lower weight, so he's supposed to have the speed advantage. And he just got blasted, being beat by the punch on 2 shots that took him down. It's just one of those things. Sometimes it happens in boxing. The guy shot. You could see it. But I want to give Sor Rungvisai credit in the sense that this is where I do credit a fighter in that position. We don't see enough in boxing today. We used to see it much more in past eras, and I'm giving Sor Rungvisai a lot of credit for this. I also saw things, though, still to give him a lot of credit for in his performance, which was he, from the opening bell, was not messing around, meant business, was more aggressive than even the first fight, and I don't know how exactly, but maybe on boxer's instinct right off the bat or something, or maybe something he felt in the first fight. He seemed to come in his mind thinking, I'm gonna run this guy out of the ring. He's got nothing, and that's exactly what he did. Also, what he deserves credit for, which he showed actually in the past, but he wasn't on most people's radar screens. But he showed, look, this is at 115 pounds. This is not a weight class where many people can bring power. They certainly can't bring one-punch power. And this guy has 40 knockouts now, which in modern boxing with boxers less active, I think it's in the top 5 in the sport right now. So his power is for real. And at 115 pounds, that's exciting to have a guy that can punch like that. Power's the last thing to go. He's 30 years old in that weight class. So what I'm hopeful for in Sor Rungvisai is that even though he's getting old for the weight class, even though he's coming off a spectacular win, power stays the longest. I hope his power stays around for a few more of these big matchups so they live up to expectation.
Yeah, because I think from what we saw, Jeremiah, he's capable of beating anybody at that weight class.
Well, I mean, I think with his kind of power, you'd certainly have to think that he's a player. I mean,
well, I don't think it's just the power; it's the confidence he's fighting with right now.
Well, and that's what I really liked about the rematch is that, you know, as John alluded to, he looked like he knew he won the first fight, didn't he? He came in as if he knew he was the winner, and he was going to get him out of there. I mean,
and Gonzalez came in like he knew he was the loser.
You know, and what I think it is I do think it is a bit of the weight. I do think it is a bit of the age. But what I also think it is that Rungvisai eliminated that invincibility aura of Roman Gonzalez. He realized he was human. You know, he had a change of trainers, and you know, in Rungvisai, he took every advantage of it. I mean, you know, the odds were, you know, in Gonzalez's favor. But Rungvisai fought, again, like he knew he was going to win the fight. I mean, they were talking about how he only got to train for 2 months prior to the fight, and he got 4 months this time. He just looked energized. You know, I like what I saw from him. I mean, he's still kind of raw. You know, in terms of technical prowess, he's not on Inouye's level. He's not far behind. He's not that raw. You know, I'm not talking like he's Ricardo Mayorga or something, but he's still, you know, he's good. He's still sharp. He's not as sharp as Inoue. He's not as sharp as Estrada, but you know, he still is good. I mean, he really bangs hard with that left hand. He varies it up a bit. He's not like Pacquiao, an old Pacquiao, you know, where he'll toss a straight left all the time. You know, he'll vary it up a little bit. Obviously, the right hook is just as good as the left hand. I mean, the knockout itself was really impressive. I mean, you know, he was beating him to the punch time and time again, but the first knockdown, Gonzalez didn't seem that hurt, but the second one, he really clocked him with. And I think we should give Rungvisai a lot of credit. I mean, and I think people should realize that, you know, the guys age pretty early at the lower weight divisions, and I still think Roman Gonzalez was, you know, a damn good fighter, and Rungvisai, they've got to pair him up with Estrada or Inoue, those must-see TV. Maybe they can put a card together again where they'll have Rungvisai versus Estrada, and then Inoue versus somebody better, you know, like Yafei or Nkawas. That would be a great card. I'm hoping they do something like it in the future. But I like what I see out of Rungvisai. Thinking about it, this might be the biggest win a Thai fighter has ever had. Maybe I'm mistaken. I think a Thai upset Humberto Gonzalez at 108, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that this is a bit bigger, so credit to him.
All right, and John, what's your take on Rungvisai against Inoue or Estrada?
Well, I agree with Jeremiah completely on that. I want to see it, and I want to see it now. You know, one of the things where, to me, a big problem in today's boxing is fighters fighting 2 times a year, and then when they're only fighting 2 times a year, we are being fed this notion that, well, we don't get right to the big fight. They're only fighting 2 times a year. We need to get these fights in now. The next fight it should be, I think, it's supposedly in plastic belt world, Quadras and Estrada was an eliminator, which, you know, everything has got some kind of silver belt or something on it, but supposedly, according to the WBC, that would mean that that's for the number 1 contender spot. So that's got to be the next fight for me for Sor Rungvisai. I don't need him against an unknown opponent. We don't need Estrada against an unknown opponent in the interim. These guys need to fight next. So if that can easily be made under the cover of the WBC plastic, let's do that and get that on next, and then let's get Inoue with someone better. That's the way this should go. I do not want, with fighters fighting two times a year, some sort of delay, especially at 115. It's a needless division. You know, these guys all should be fighting at bantamweight, if they're not fighting at flyweight. There's no need for this division. And why I mention that again is just because we need that for the sake of boxing, but otherwise we also need it because if I'm going to get the 115-pound division featured on Superfly, then I don't need to. It should be just because these guys are going to be fighting. These guys we just saw are going to be in an unofficial tournament, not because we saw them and then we're going to see them against, guys they're minus 1,000 favorites against.
Yeah, well, but John, we're never getting rid of all these organizations. I mean, and you're never getting rid of all the weight classes. I mean, I would be all right if they just went and they could have all these weight classes as long as there's only one champion in it. I would settle for that.
I think they're both as bad. I've thought that over, and I've often heard that argument, but I think they're both as bad. I do think you need to get rid of both. I mean, now, if you're forced to pick, you're going to get rid of all the organizations.
And you're not going to get rid of all. Heck, you're not going to get rid of even one of them. So.
Right. We're not going to get rid of any of these things the way it's going. But
nobody really gives a damn what we think. So.
Well, it might happen. I mean, if Austin Trout can win his court case against the WBO, we might have one less. And in fact, who's Grot? How do you say his name? Remember the guy who sued the WBC? What was it in the 80s or 90s?
Rocchiano or
he
was it the light heavyweight?
Yes.
Yeah.
Rocchiano, and Johnny or something?
Yeah. You're probably getting it more right than we are, but he potentially could have bankrupted the WBC, but he settled out of court, so obviously that didn't happen, and I can't blame him. He probably got a lot more than he was expecting in the first place. But what I was going to say is, in regards to the fight itself, Rungvisai and Estrada or Inoue, I would settle for Inoue too, is, we've got the momentum going, so make it happen now, right? We don't need, in the lower weight divisions, Americans especially will forget about you very quickly. And so, since we had a lot of attention on this card, a lot of big-time people were paying attention to it. I think they sold a lot of tickets, too, if I'm not mistaken. You've got the momentum. Go get it now. Make the fight early next year. And then later next year, we can worry about having that sort of final where, whoever wins between Inoue and whoever, and Estrada and Rungvisai, they fight each other later that year. And we can have another great card, but they just need to get it going. Like John said, don't play with our emotions. Just get it done.
All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up for tonight since we're going to come back with Triple G and Canelo later in the week. But before we do that, Jeremiah, any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? Well, I don't know if you guys heard, but apparently Adrian Broner's in trouble again. Apparently he knocked out a guy.
Yeah, he finally knocked somebody out, though.
Yeah, his first one in what? When's the last time he had a knockout? Was that Alekaverdiev? I might be mistaken.
That last time he got arrested, but go
ahead. Yeah, probably. Well,
that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, well, maybe it was the last time he went to the strip club. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how often he's taking these fights in the street or whatnot. But no, he did stop Ashley Theophane in 2016 and Alekaverdiev before that. But, it's just we've talked about this at length before. I mean, Adrian Broner he's just got too many character flaws. His career is imploding. I don't feel bad for the guy. And he's going to get in big trouble this time. I mean, just too many incidences.
I don't think he's got a career to implode anymore. I think that's been done since the Mikey Garcia fight.
No, and to a degree, I certainly accept that. Broner, however, he is a personality. He's recognizable, and he sells. Good. He draws big audiences. But I just think with all these run-ins with the law, he might end up doing more bad stuff because of it, because he won't be able to rely on the paydays. So. Again, it's just another one of those incidences. I'm not surprised. I mean, this started years and years ago. But yep.
All right, John. And John, before you give me your final thought, please don't end it with yep. Go ahead.
All right, I'll try not to.
Okay.
I think it's worth pointing out. I've mentioned this before, but it's a good time with this show we just had the Benavides and Gavril fight. I think Eddie Mustafa Muhammad and Buddy McGirt are two trainers who don't always get the most talented guys to work with and always do a good job. And since they don't necessarily get brought in with the most talented guys, they don't get enough credit. In other words, for example, not criticizing Freddie Roach at all, but if Freddie Roach gets a ton of credit, when he comes in with, say, a Miguel Cotto, later in his career. Guys like Eddie Mustafa Muhammad and Buddy McGirt aren't getting to come in with the Miguel Cottos or the Gennady Golovkins of the world. And I think that they do a good job. They're always got very sound advice. You see them having the fighters do little things to make improvements, which is tough and takes a lot of discipline for the trainer to stay on the guy to do it. And I'd like to see them, especially Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, he's in his mid-60s now. Time flies by. I'd like to see, Buddy McGirt's younger than him, but I'd like to see these guys get some more credit, and maybe before they're done training, maybe they get one marquee guy that they've developed that goes on a good run, and they kind of get their due.
Yeah, most definitely. Eddie Mustafa Muhammad was on the show, almost 2 years ago. He's a great guy. At the time, he was training Badu Jack, and Badu Jack got immensely better by being around Eddie Mustafa Muhammad.
I agree with you, Mike. Well, I listened to your show with Eddie Mustafa Muhammad. That was a great show. I thought Eddie Mustafa Muhammad had some great stories in there. And
but what do you think of my questions? You're not complimenting me.
No, that's what I mean. It was a great show. I said it was a great show. It was a great show. Hey, I listened to it. It was a great show. But I love when Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, because I could see this being true because fighters kind of know fighters and who to respect, that Eddie Mustafa Muhammad was watching Mike McCallum and Colombe in the audience in Monte Carlo, I believe it was. And I remember that very briefly, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, I think he messed around at the Kronk gym as well, and McCallum did a little bit too, and I think they became friends there. And I don't know who was training McCallum, but Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, I could totally believe this. He said right in the first round that McCallum stopped listening to his trainer and just started listening to Eddie from the first row. And I think that was the rematch when he beat Callum Bay after losing to him the first time, and that Bob Arum, got to give Bob Arum credit on that. He noticed that and brought Eddie into full-time training with some fighters. So I thought that was, a lot of good stories on there, and that was one of them that was the first time I'd heard that, and that one stuck in my mind. But go ahead, Jeremiah. I know you had a point there.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because, Muhammad trains in the same gym as Roger and Floyd. I don't know, maybe color me crazy, or maybe color me not crazy. I think Eddie Mustafa Muhammad might be the best trainer in that gym. And, Roger and Floyd get all the credit because of, what Floyd Mayweather became. And I think they deserve credit.
Well, plus the fact that they're really loud about it, where Eddie Mustafa Muhammad's not.
No, but I mean, we've watched, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad fight before, and he was a guy who looked like he understood the game, right? The little things. And I think that translates verbally into the gym, and a lot of these guys pick up on that stuff. I think there's a case to be made that, Roger and Floyd, might be playing second fiddle to, Muhammad, and I think John's right. I think these guys deserve more credit, especially a guy like that.
But Jeremiah, I think, made two excellent points. One is he's exactly right. One of the reasons I think McGirt and Mustafa Muhammad are so good is if you watch them as fighters, they were almost like really old school fighters where they did all these little things.
High ring IQ.
Right. And the second thing that he makes a good point about is, I do know this with the Mayweather fighters. In the Mayweather gym, Eddie Mustafa, and you see him wear the hat sometimes, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad's nickname is the General. So what does that tell you about what Jeremiah just pointed out? There may be some things going on behind the scenes in that gym that the fighters that are in there know about, and Eddie Mustafa Muhammad doesn't get credit for because his nickname in that gym is the General.
So someone should ask some of these fighters. I'd like to see that asked in a question. I'd like to see that presented as a question to, somebody who's been a mainstay in that gym for years. Who is a better trainer? I'm sure. Probably they wouldn't want to ruffle any feathers. So,
they're going to say who's paying them.
Yeah, maybe we wouldn't get, maybe somebody who's left the gym recently. I don't know. But I would like to hear, some good analysis of what actually goes on and who is the better trainer.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I want to remind everybody the Triple G Canelo preview show will be coming out later this week. Also, check out the Ringside Boxing Show. The guest this week for Dennis Taylor and John Responte was Frank Stallone, the brother of Sylvester Stallone. And I think they've also got a little they've got a little review of the Super Flyweight fights from last night on HBO. So make sure you check out John Responte and Dennis Taylor on the Ringside Boxing Show. Make sure you go to grillingtruth.net. I know we got 2 new boxing articles a day, one from Christopher Sheldon, the other one from Jeremiah Preisser. Jeremiah, you want to tell everybody about that article?
Yeah, so my article, every month I spotlight a prospect, and, I always spotlight a prospect who is fighting in that month. So that's kind of my formula. And when I look at the landscape, I have a BoxRec profile. I keep track of all of these guys. And if you don't have one, get one. It's a really good way of keeping track of, not only prospects, but, guys, that can fly under the radar if you don't want to miss it. It's a good way of keeping up. But Dennis Berenchek, he was a very good amateur, like a lot of the guys from 2008 and 2012 for the Ukrainians. He's less well known because he started a bit later, and he might be lesser than just about all of them. Though, seeing the talent that's come out of there, it's not a big knock on him. But he's fighting at 135, a traditional division. I liken his style a bit to Dmitry Pirog. He likes to shift a lot. He doesn't have good hand speed or big power, but he's versatile in the things that he does. He's oddly slick. He'll utilize the Philly shell if he has to. He'll bob and weave if he has to. He'll just put the earmuffs on. He's a good fighter. He's going to have a tough time at 135 because the division is, it's heating up, but he's one to keep an eye out for.
All right, guys, so remember you can check that out at grillingtruth.net. You can also follow us on Twitter at grillingtruth. You can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Music, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for John Einreinhofer, Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends